Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where the gnomes live. This is Sharon Oriella, and today I have an unplanned project. I just built this little storage trunk for myself, and this is all made with foil. It has a working hinge and a tray, and this is the first one I've made of this size. I've made a number of miniature ones, and I started these in 2015, I believe, and they're all made the same. So foil, masking tape, and paper towels. And I do have these on my blog, and I do walk people through the steps on my blog, but I've never done it on video. So last week when I decided to make myself one, I thought I'll just turn the camera on, even though I've never made one this size, and just kind of take you along with me. So it's a little bit of a journey. I did make some mistakes along the way and I had to fix those, but I did include it in the video. Even though this trunk is made with foil, don't let that deter you. It's actually a very sturdy little trunk. I have no issues with it at all. I'll be using it for years. There's a little bit of cardboard in the bottom of the tray, the bottom of the trunk. These slats are cardboard, which I'll show you how to make, or paint as well. I'm also going to show you how to do the hinge, which I've been talking about for years on my Facebook page. This is masking tape and fabric, and I've used this for doors and for these little trunks. But I've never done it on video, so I'm really happy I can pass that along today as well. Alright, so with all that said, let's get started. In the next clip is going to be the supplies list, and don't forget there are timestamps in the pinned comment below. So the main things that we'll need is foil, tape, and paper towels, and some white glue. Now none of these brands are necessary. You can use whatever you have on hand. I do use a strong one for the foil, and if you are using a no-name brand foil or a grocery store brand, it will be a lot thinner than this here. So you'll have to roll off more than what I'm rolling off, which is fine, but I'm just letting you know that what you see me rolling off in the video will differ for you if you're using a weaker foil. Okay? A good masking tape, make sure that your foil doesn't say non-stick because the masking tape has to stick to it. And the paper towels should be the cheapest ones that you can find. You don't want anything 3-ply, you don't want anything with a quilted design. I believe this is a Walmart brand, and of course you don't have to use the same brand. I'm just showing you that it's a great value and it's a cheap paper towel, because the design that you see on there, it mostly disappears when it's wet. So that's what you want. You want a paper towel where the design disappears when it's wet. Okay, and I've used that paper towel to do all sorts of different projects like this guy here, and the trunk that's in this video, and my trees. And this is the brand that I'm using. It's just your basic white glue. You don't have to use the same brand. You can use any white glue that you have on hand. Tacky Glue works, Elmer's School Glue, any white glue. And color choices are totally up to you. I just use your basic craft acrylic paints that I find in the dollar store. And with those, of course, you'll need some paintbrushes. I like to have a variety of different sizes on hand. And I used a small amount of cardboard. So these strips here are cardboard. The bottom of the tray and the bottom of the trunk has a piece of cardboard in it. And for decoration, things like this here, I forget what the name is. They're these paper clip things. And these are the bigger versions. These are mini versions that I found on Amazon quite some time ago. I even forgot I had them on hand. And book paper, which I think is really important. Now I keep old books that are heading to the trash. I save them for crafts. Ones that are unreadable or missing pages. And yeah, this paper here will make the trunk extra sturdy. So if you don't have any book paper on hand, you can also try like your basic brown paper. You could try that out, or just do another layer of paper towel on the inside. Alright guys, in the next clip I am rolling off some foil to make the bottom portion of the trunk. That's what we get started with. I did not measure it. I made this trunk custom size for that area there. And you can use the same method in this video to make any size trunk that you want to make. So you can go from miniature to the larger one. It's totally up to you. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is cover it with the masking tape. Now you did see me put the cardboard in the bottom, and that's just to make sure I have a flat bottom, so it sits flat on the table. And I'm going to be covering that up with masking tape, as well as everything else. I'm going to cover the entire surface with masking tape. I'm sure there's a few different ways that the lid could be made, but what I'm thinking of doing is I made these two pieces, and these are 2 inches tall. And you can see they're not very perfect. I just quickly cut them out with my scissors. And I think I'll have one on each end like this. Okay, and I'm going to do this in sections because I was having troubles working with one length of foil. So I'll just do one end first, and I'll be connecting them in the center. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tape up this here so it stands up. Okay, so that was a bit of a finicky process. It wasn't difficult, it was just finicky. So what I did was, what I showed you, I did the one side with the cardboard, then I did the other side, and then I overlapped them and taped them together. And the top kept falling, so I had to do one in the center, just to keep it held up until I can get more tape on there. So what I'll do now is I'll tape it all up, and then it'll be stronger and easier to deal with. Alright guys, I'm just popping in real quick just to clarify a couple of things, because I think it's really important that you know that I didn't know what I was doing. I was just winging my way along, because I've made some miniature ones, but I've never made any this size. And I knew that I just needed a bottom and a top to get me started. Okay, and I'll show you something else. I didn't even notice this until I was like editing. Look how straight it is over there, but look how wonky it is right here. And the reason why my lid works so well is because of the hinge that I built. So keep in mind when you get to the hinge part that you want the hinge to go almost right across, and then you won't have any problems with your lid, even if it's wonky like this. So I think that's important because it looks like I'm just whipping through and not caring about giving any instructions. I do actually really care when I'm doing a video because I want to make sure everybody is clear on what's happening. It's just because I really didn't know what I was going to be doing next, and I was just trying to get the basic shapes down, because I've learned over the years if you can get the basic shapes down, then the rest will just kind of fall into place. Okay, so I just wanted to stop and mention those things before we continue on. Alright, so now it's easier to handle with all that tape on there, and it's still looking a little bit wonky, but I'm just thinking about the lid opening and closing. So I'm going to put a piece of cardboard along the back, a thin strip. I'm going to tape that in place. I got that one taped in, and now I'm going to do a matching one on this side, or on the lid, sorry, and it's going to be flush with the outside. So I'll tape it on so it's flush, it's not sticking out. And I still don't know how I'm going to do hinges, but when I get there, I'll figure it out. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to cover the inside of the bottom and the inside of the lid with book paper. Alright, and I'm going to mix a little bit of water in there, just to make the glue easier to work with, because if it's too thick, it's a little bit hard to brush on. Okay, and before anybody has a heart attack, this book was already missing pages, so I saved it from the trash. So what I do with these old pages is make sure all 4 sides are torn, because it helps them stick better, and you don't want to have straight edges, of course. I'm just going to brush the glue in. And then I just lay a page down, and I'll lay another page down here. And then I just brush the glue on top of those. And whenever you put a piece of paper down, just make sure you're putting it over top glue. So don't put it on anything dry. And then you just brush the glue on top. So I set it under the fan for about an hour or so, and it's pretty much dry. It's all dry to the touch. A little bit of glue there still drying underneath, but yeah, I can work on it now. And what I'm thinking of doing is fixing up this corner here so this part isn't overhanging so much or so far. Yeah, I think I'll do that. So I'm going to get some foil and just straighten that out there. Might straighten it out a little bit on this side as well. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do now is add a strip here. And I'm just going to roll up foil. And I think what I'm going to do now is shove in a piece of cardboard. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so I'm going to tape that up as well. And I didn't do the back yet on purpose because I'm not sure what's going to happen back there as far as hinges go. So we're just going to tape up what we have right now. And if we need anything back there, we can add it after. But I'll go ahead and tape that up. Alright, I got her all taped up, and I'm thinking I'm going to cover the inside. This new edge here, I'm going to cover it with the book paper. Okay, that's dry to the touch now, and I wrapped it around. And I'm still not sure what I'm going to do on this side, but I'm just trying to figure out hinges. Now I need a little bit of space between here and here. Like I need to raise it up just a little bit like that. I think that might be too high. Let's see. No, that would work. So I'm going to put that cardboard there just as a spacer until I get my masking tape on. Yeah, and now this side, I'm going to do masking tape on that side too, but I have to hold this up somehow. Okay, there we go. So I'll use this one here. And I want the sticky side of that masking tape and the sticky side of this one to touch, and they're going to fuse together. Oh, that's cool. I think what I'm going to use is a piece of fabric. And it's very thin. It's a very thin piece of fabric. And I did check to see if the lid would close okay with that in there, and it does. Yeah, I've done these masking tape fabric type hinges before on smaller things, and it always works really well. Okay, so I'm going to get some tacky glue. And I also have to cut this part here so it'll lay flat inside there. I want to get that glue up in the behind this little wall here. I'm going to put a very thin layer right here. I wasn't planning on this, but I've changed my mind now. I'm not going to go in between where it opens and closes. I just want that fabric to stick down here. So very, very thin layer. Spread it out in a thin, even layer. So no glue in the center. And then I open it up and just rub my finger along to make sure there's full contact above and below that middle seam. And I did the same on this side as well. Alright, Alright guys, popping in from the future because I realized when I was editing I didn't mention the fact the fabric is to make sure that if the masking tape ever lets go, that fabric is stuck. So I made sure to overlap the fabric way below where the masking tape is. So it was on top of the book paper, and then later on I'm going to add more book paper on top of the fabric. So that fabric is pretty much sandwiched between a permanent surface. In the back, all I had was masking tape to work with, and so when I put the hinge over, I could only put it over masking tape, but it's okay because once I get the surface of the paper towel over top, then it holds everything in place. So the fabric does ensure that that hinge is always going to stay in place, even if the masking tape lets go underneath. So I left that for about 20 minutes or so, and the only thing I don't want to happen is for this to get too stressed. I mean, it's going to hold, but eventually I'm just worried about the glue ever, pulling away from the masking tape. So what I'm thinking of doing now is adding a stopper. I got these from Amazon. They're wax thread. Now this is not a sponsored video, but these wax threads, I bought them for the basket making. If you remember the basket I put up in April, I had the wrong thread. You're supposed to use wax thread. So I bought this to try my next baskets with, but I also think it would be great for this because it won't tangle. Okay, so I'm going to attach it here and here, and now's a good time because when I do the outside I don't want to see where it comes through. So I'll use an awl pointy thing. If you don't have one of those, a nail would work. I think I'll cut 3 pieces and then braid them to make like a little chain. So there is my braid, and I had knotted both ends of course, and this is very, very, very strong. So wax thread is suggested for pine needle baskets because how strong it is and that it doesn't tangle. So I'll poke a hole right through here. Okay, so that should hold it in place until I get the outside covered. And when I do the outside covering, I left a little bit of thread exposed there. So the glue and everything will go on top of that and it will hold it in forever. Okay, so because I put the string right there, I can't let this fall back too far. Otherwise it's just going to make a lot of stress on the string. So I'm going to make it so the lid only goes up that far and then stops. So right there. It's wanting to pull through, so I'm going to pull the string up and then tape over it again. And that should stop it from pulling. If I had troubles with it pulling through the tape, I could take it all the way around, wrap it around, and put it through the hole one more time. But I think it's going to hold for me, but just keep that in mind if you have troubles with yours. Wax thread is my new best friend. I love it. I love the way it feels too. And apparently, if you don't have any on hand, you can run your string through wax, and that should keep it from tangling. And you won't see it for a few more clips yet, but I did end up adding another one here because this one kept pulling through and I had to keep stopping and taping it down, retaping it down. So I added the second one and that helped a lot. For now, I wanted to show you something, and I would have talked about this in my introduction because I'm making a change now. I was just looking at my antique trunk book. And look at this. I'm in love with that shape. And I think I'm early enough to turn this one into that. So all I will have to do is just add a bit of foil around the bottom, just to kind of give it that flowy out look at the bottom. And then a little bit at the top. Okay, I'm really excited about that shape. I think that's looking really cool. Once I get all the other stuff on there, it's going to look really nice. And the other thing I wanted to point out was this hinge here works great, but when I was putting it together, I noticed now that there's a little bit of a gap there. So my foil part dips down before my hinge. So there's a bit of a gap right here. And there's no gaps in here, just that little bit of space that I made with the cardboard. And I noticed that it's just leaning, you see that? So I'm going to fix that with cardboard later after I get my first layer of paper towel on there. And here I am yet again from the future, because I realized when I was editing I didn't explain the paper towel part. So we're going to be covering the entire surface with the paper towel, and that's going to give us a paintable surface. It also strengthens up the trunk itself, so it'll never collapse. This part is squishy still because I did add that extra foil on top and here as well, but it's still not, I'm pushing on that really hard. Nothing's going to happen to it. It's just a little bit squishy, that's all. Okay, so we're going to get the paper towel. We're going to make sure that the sides are torn. Okay, so we got the two torn sides there. And this one edge I left flat, I believe, if I remember correctly, because it went right to the very bottom and just underneath. So you use your finger dipped in glue and just make sure you get it wrapped underneath there. When we do painting later, you just paint along that edge. And then for this side here, I did tear the one edge, because when you join it up with the other one, you want those edges to blend in really, really nicely. So if you have a straight edge, it's not going to blend in. You're just going to have a straight edge there. And if you don't put, a slat right on top of it, then you're going to notice that straight edge. I just run it along the surface of the glue, and then I fold the dry sides together and I pull off the excess glue. And this is why you want to water down your glue a little bit, because it makes this part so much easier. If you have thick glue, then it starts to tear the paper towel. Then you're going to open it up, put the wet side down on your hand, and then just get your fingers dipped in the glue and rub it along the other side. And make sure both sides are completely wet. And then you just open it right up the best you can. I know it's going to be a little bit of a struggle, because sometimes it just, it's a struggle, but open it up best you can. And then you just lay it down flat on your surface, right to the very edge, bottom edge here, and then the top. And just work out any air bubbles, big creases that you see, work those out. Yeah, so see right here, I didn't spend enough time in there straightening that out, but I don't mind it. It's the overall trunk looks pretty good, so I'm okay with that. But do work out the air bubbles and all the creases, and now we'll just carry on with the video. I'm going to do one in the back, and I'm going to meet it up here. So I'm just going to tear the one side so I can blend it in. So this torn side will be up here. I think I'll do strips like this from here to here. I'll let the top dry under the fan. So the entire surface has been covered in the paper towel, and it sat underneath the fan for a couple of hours, and I did it in sections so I could turn it on its side and stuff. So it's been done, I think, 3 different sections I did. So I do a section, let it dry, then I do the next section and let it dry. And the seams, I can't even see them. Oh, there's one there, but you can barely see it. If I didn't know I had attached them here, I wouldn't even know. So it really helps to tear those edges. And then when you meet the seams up, make sure you blend them in really well with your finger. And then after everything was dry, I did do the top edge here. And I did that by making these narrow little strips, and all the edges were torn, and those were placed on the side. And I blended them in really well with my finger, and you can't even tell. Alright, so now I'm going to do the hinge. So I just want to open it up and push it right up to where it opens there, and make sure I can still open it all the way. I'm going to use masking tape. Alright, I'll leave that sit for about 20 minutes and we'll come back and check on it. Once that cardboard was dry, I removed the masking tape and I stuck another piece on top. So now I have 2 strips of cardboard back there, and I noticed when I open my lid, it does rest right on top of those pieces of cardboard. So I do believe that's going to help with the overall stability of the lid itself. So I think that's a must with the fabric when you have a bigger box. On these smaller ones, I didn't have to do that, of course, because there's not much weight there. And yeah. So on these bigger ones, a little bit of extra help goes a long way. Yeah, I think it took care of that leaning. It's leaning just slightly on this one side because of the way it's settled. But yeah, I'm happy with it. The lid works perfectly fine. Yeah, I'm happy with that. From the floor to the top of the box itself is 4 inches, and it is a ruler's length across, so 12 inches from edge to edge, and then it's about 5.5, I believe. Yeah, 5.5 inches across. Alright guys, it looks like I jumped ahead to the painting, but I'm going to get to the painting in the next clip. I had totally forgotten that I was going to cover this with paper towel. When you have pieces like this, you see that open edge there? That will always be vulnerable. Like if you hit it or whatever, bump into it, it could start peeling away. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And cardboard is a little bit weak on its own, but if you add paper towel over top, it becomes pretty solid, and it takes care of those hollow edges as well. And of course you want to do this before you start painting. It doesn't matter though, I just have to paint over this once the paper towel is dry. And again, you want to blend out those seams wherever it meets up, so just make sure to run your finger along and work out any air bubbles. Alright, I'll let that dry and then I'll continue on painting the black. Okay, I'm going to do a straight black because I want that darker undertone. It depends on what color you're wanting. If you want a bright trunk, then paint it white first. If you want a darker trunk like I'm going for, I'm going to paint it black. And I'll paint in sections just like I did the paper towel, so I'll let the top dry and then I'll flip it over and I'll do the underside. I'm going to be going over it with Hunter Green. I don't know if I'm going to be keeping this color or not. I'm just going to try it out. I haven't practiced. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm not going to do a thick coat. I'm just going to lightly go over. I want some of that black to show through, so I'll just go lightly. And now I'm thinking about the little bit of design on there, and I was looking around for something I could stamp with. And in my stamps, I did have this thing here. It's just a bunch of dots. It's just a can opener. And I thought I might use that for a handle. And I was also thinking, how could you make one? I haven't tried this yet, but I just put a couple lines of felt in glue. First I gotta mix my paint. I don't know if I like this bright yellow, but I think it's the only yellow I have. That could potentially work, but I don't think I want to battle with that too much. I think this is a little bit too dark. Okay, we'll give this a try, and worst case scenario, we can always just paint over it if we don't like. Okay, now I'm going to take some burnt umber. I'm using this brush here, and I'm just going to go around and just kind of dirty up the surface. Okay. So these are foil that I rolled up, covered in masking tape, and then the paper towel. Once the paper towel was dry, then I painted them. So I'm going to use hot glue and tacky glue together, and the hot glue will just hold this in place while the tacky glue dries. So I actually had a little bit of a struggle with the design because I was kind of freaking out when I got to this part here, because I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't think ahead enough, as usual, and I didn't know how I was going to fix an issue here, because everything I tried across here wasn't working, and I actually didn't bring this right to the bottom, so it looked kind of funny. But I have a solution, and I'm excited about this because it's really cute. So it's going to involve some of these guys here. These are those paper. You stick them through paper, and you can open up the other end, like that. What do you call those? You're going to have to leave me a comment. Anyway, it involves those, and another piece of this. I'm going to fix this here. So we're just going to cut a piece. See, because I brought the other ones from the top here, and they go all the way around underneath. And then these ones, I didn't go far enough down. So I need to add a piece here, but then I have the issue of a join. So I wanted to cover that join, so that's what I came up with this piece here, which turns out to be really nice. Now I did cut it so it goes all the way underneath, so I'm going to cut this a little bit longer. Okay, you just want to bend it so it's bending all the way around the edge. So you're kind of forming it to that edge, like so. And then we'll put the glue in there. So while that's setting, we will make this other piece, and I just want to make sure it's the same size as the first one. I'm just going to bend the ends to make a little bit of a point. And I wouldn't wait too long after these strips are dry to play around with the shapes, because once it's totally cured, everything's cured, they get kind of stiff and hard to work with. Okay, I think that'll do it there. And I'll use my awl. Then we can just open this up on the other side. Okay, and because we cut these, we just want to make sure you paint the ends. So these are pretty nice on their own, but I do like to dirty them up just a little bit. So I'll just dab a little bit of paint on there. I do a little bit of black, and then I take a little bit of burnt sienna. It's like a rusty color. Go over the black. Make it look like a little bit of rust. Not much. And of course that's all personal preference, guys. I like things that are roughed up and a little bit older looking and wonky looking, obviously. Wonky things are my favorite things. Okay, I'll have to let that dry for a bit before I attach that one. So I'll set it in front of the fan. I'll be right back. So I don't want any glue in the center, of course, because you want to make it look like the strap's coming through. And I won't use any hot glue. So right over that join, and that hides that, plus decorates the front. And I chose these clamps instead of the binder clips because the binder clips are so strong and they do tend to leave a line. So I'll just use these guys here. Right now I'm thinking about making a lock cover for right here, and it'll be the same way I made these things here. So we're just going to roll up some foil. So I'm going to do that one on camera for you so you can see how I made these. It'll just be a different shape. So when I get to a rounded spot, I just split the tape down to where the piece starts, the original piece, and then I can get that tape down without wrinkling. So I did a couple layers of foil and then tape, as you saw. And now we're going to do the paper towel. So what I'm going to do to make this easier for myself is break it down to size. I just tore the paper towel there down to where that rounded part ends, so I can get it around without too much wrinkle, because that was a longer piece. This one's short enough. I can just tap it over. Just make sure there's no air bubbles and no big wrinkles, and we'll let that dry. So that's dry now, and I put a little bit on the back as well. Most of it's not going to lift up, it's just going to lift up just a tiny bit, so I just want to make sure I get the back painted as well. Okay, I just dirtied this up just a little bit with some burnt sienna. I did crease where it would naturally lift up. So this is a lock cover for those of you who've never seen one before. And they come in different shapes and sizes. Oh, and the other thing was, I found this in my stash of stuff. So this is like a paper decoration type thing. I could take these off. I could also make one out of cardboard. It's not really going to be seen, it's just that if someone lifts this up just a little bit, you'd see it under there and make it look like a lock. I think I'll use this, and not everyone's going to have one of these, but you can make it out of cardboard. You just have to do a little key shape, that's all. This will never even be seen unless somebody's looking at the trunk and they lift that little flap up, but just for fun's sake, we'll attach one. Of course, if you make one out of cardboard, then you don't have to worry about this. You can just use tacky glue. Oh, I forgot, there's a thing under there. I can't clamp it. Okay, I can't clamp it, but I can set something with a little bit of weight on there, and we'll have to wait and see if that works. So that worked really well. I tried to tug on it and everything is staying in place. So that's that Gorilla Super Glue. And when I did it, I just made sure to get the Gorilla Glue on the very edge because it's a little bit dipped in the middle. So I had to put Gorilla Glue on the very edge of the piece. So now I will attach my lock cover, and I'll use tacky glue to do that, and a couple of clamps. So my clamps aren't long enough actually, so I'm just going to set a full bottle of glue there and prop it up here. And it doesn't take long with tacky glue for it to catch on, so probably about 15 minutes I'd leave it, and then we can carry on to the next step. So I'm using cardboard strips, and they're 1 inch across. Okay, so what I did here, because I'm going to be attaching another strip on each end of the board, I didn't know if I'd be able to get the seams met without seeing them, and I was able to do it. So it doesn't really matter how you do this, as long as you get the ends covered first, and then you put the other piece on top, and make sure all the ends are torn. And I'll put one on each end. And what this does is gives you a paintable surface and covers up all the open edges of the cardboard, and yeah, it makes it look more like wood. Okay, so you just want to work out any air bubbles and try not to have any creases because I like to make it as flat as possible. So as you can see, when the paper towel dries on the cardboard, it almost completely disappears there. Now I'm going to paint everything black, and I'm running out of black paint. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so once that black is dry, I just did a series of different colors. I'm going to start with burnt umber. So I'm just going to take that burnt umber, going to get off the majority of the paint. I'm going to leave some of the black showing through. So in between each coat, I do put the fan on it, and I just leave it sit underneath the fan for a few minutes until it's dry enough to paint over. So next is the cinnamon brown, and I'm going to get the majority off my brush, and again just lightly go over. I don't want a solid color, I'm going to let some of that burnt umber show through. And then I take a little bit of burnt sienna, lightly brush that on, just to bring a little bit of reddish tone in there. And then I just take a little bit of beige and gently highlight. And I usually take one of these brushes here, and I'll go over with a bit of black. Just a tiny amount. So this is my finished one here. You can see I just drag that black over ever so slightly on top. And this comes in handy when you see colors like this where I've dragged on too much beige. I'll just go over it with the black just to break it up. Just highlighting like this, you can keep going back and forth and adding as much as you want, as many times as you want. And if you don't like what you see, just let them sit for about 30 minutes or so. Then come back and check it out, because you'll notice that the colors change quite a bit. It's important to kind of figure out where the glue is going to go before you attempt to put this on, because I'm using tacky glue and hot glue together again. And then I put hot glue in the tips of these straps, and that helps everything kind of stay in place while the tacky glue dries. Gotta work quickly with that hot glue, so it helps to figure it out a little bit ahead of time. And then I ended up adding another piece down here just for added decoration, and that's just a piece of cardboard, same way I did this, and then those pieces, same way I did that. I wasn't sure if I was going to use these or not. I just threw them together so fast, and they're a little bit wrinkly, but I did manage to get out most of the wrinkles just by squeezing them with my pliers, just by squeezing the handle with my pliers. I was able to fix them up quite a bit doing that. So I think I'll use them after all. They're a little bit wonky, but then I remembered that's my favorite. So I will go ahead and stick these on right about there, and that will just finish them off nicely. Alright, so I'll use my hot glue and tacky glue together, and we'll be back in a second. Alright, so now it's time to make the tray, and in the next clip you're going to see the box before it was painted, because I had actually made another tray when we first started, and I don't like this one, so I decided to remake it. And you can see how tall it is, and I figured a shorter tray would be easier for everyone to make, and you don't have to worry about it. If you have a dome lid like that, even if you have something sticking up, you don't have to have tall sides, because you can still shut the lid. Alright, so let's get started. I'm just adding the stoppers for my tray, and I decided to go with foil because I have a more rounded shape. You can use cardboard, of course, but this just made more sense for me. If you did your box with cardboard, of course you'd want to do cardboard stoppers. So you could just double them up or triple them up, and then you'd have enough to catch when you put your tray in, because that's what the tray is going to sit on top of. But while I'm at it, I noticed that this rounded section here is much further in than this section. So I'm going to fix that while I'm over here, because I got to cover some of this with the paper anyway, so I might as well do it all at the same time. And now I'll push that in, because I think that would interfere with my tray later. Okay, I think that'll do it. Now I'll grab my masking tape. So I'm just going to cover this part here with the masking tape, because I don't know what it would look like if I just cover it with book paper. So I'll just cover it with the masking tape, and then it'll give me the same consistency all the way around. Okay, and the next step was to add more book paper, and that's just simple. Just put in the glue, put the book paper on top, and then let it dry. And you can see I brought it right up to the bottom of my hinge. I didn't put any on top though. I thought the fabric looked pretty nice, the colors go, so I wasn't worried about the top, just the bottom. And yeah, these are solid in there now, and now we can make the tray. So let's get started. And for my tray, I am going to use a piece of cardboard for the bottom. And you just have to keep trimming it up, and you want it to fit in there loose, so it's going to grab onto the sides to the stoppers, but it'll slide around pretty loose in there, because we are going to build up the sides, so that's going to make it a bit of a tighter fit. And then for the foil, I just rolled off about double the length of the trunk, roundabouts, you don't have to be exact, and then fold it over, and then stick that in the middle. Now we're going to fold up the sides like that, and then fold this in kind of like an envelope. So here's my first tray, and remember, I don't like this one, that's why I'm remaking it. So you can make the sides as high as you want, as long as the lid will close on top, then it's fine. But I'm going to make a shorter tray, so I'm going to roll down these sides. Okay, so now I'm just going to tape up just around the outside on the bottom, just to give it a little bit more strength so it's easier to work with. And you'll find a huge difference once you get the tape around the sides. It's so much easier to handle. Alright, so for my trunk, you can see the side is sloped in a little bit this way, and that's okay. I just know that's how it's going to go in always. Okay, so now I'm going to strengthen up the sides with a little bit more foil, so I'm going to roll off some foil and put it all on the inside and just build up those walls. Until you get it all covered in the tape, you're going to have to keep checking to make sure it fits always, because when you're playing around with it, the foil can get knocked out of place. So it's just better to check and make sure it's still fitting. Okay, I'm going to tape all the inside up. After all that's done, I just go around and just make sure that the sides aren't too bumpy. Just straighten them out and squeeze together what I need to. And then on these sides here, you see this one right here has got a little bit of a dip. I will take some extra foil and just go over top like that. I need a little bit more right there. And I'll do the top side first. Let it dry in front of the fan, then I'll do the bottom side. There's some spots that I just filled in not too long ago, so it's still drying in there, but it's dry to the touch. After you're done, you'll just look it over and you'll see that you probably have a few spots that can be filled in. I think it turned out really great. I'm happy I went with the shorter sides, and it looks good in there. I love it. So the last thing I'm going to do before I finish this video is fix this issue here. This is driving me a little bit bonkers. It's too short for one, and I'm thinking it should be the wood color. Because I do have paper towel in there and it's not dried on a straight angle, it's kind of dried out a little bit. I have to make one of the pieces fit, and then the other piece that goes on top is slightly larger so it can meet right across. I don't want to mess with that seam up there, so I just tore around the three sides, and I'm actually going to cut the top side with my scissors. I mean, it's good to know when you have a problem like this that I have here where it's too short and I'm joining, that you can fix it. It's okay, nothing's going to get ruined. You just have to approach it a little bit differently. So I'm going to cut this one. So for these top ones I used a ruler and an X-Acto knife, so they're 1 inch from one side to the other. This one I used scissors only and just eyed it, and I can see that one end is more narrow than the other, but that's totally okay. Okay, I'm just going to tear off a little bit here. I'm doing exact because I don't want to have to paint the green again. I went and washed my hands and I grabbed a couple of Q-tips. I wet one end of the Q-tip and I left the other side dry so I can wipe that glue off. So I had every intention of turning that into the wood piece like this, but after I saw the black paint dry, I fell in love with it. So I'm going to leave it black. I think it looks really, really nice. And that brings us to the end then. It's all done, and I am so happy with how it turned out. I am so happy with how it turned out. I'm in love with this little trunk. I think it's probably one of my favorite trunks. And I have a collection of real trunks in my house, but I think this one probably is my favorite right now. I love the color and all the little mistakes that I made along the way, and figuring out how to fix those. Fixing them just added to the overall charm of the box, I think anyway. I couldn't be happier, and I'm glad I brought you guys along with me so you could see the process of making one of these trunks. And hopefully that will get you through the process of making a miniature one. Maybe I'll get that on video one day, you never know. But anyway, all the same process, and if you do make one of those trunks, miniature or the life-size one, I'd love to see. Post pictures on my Facebook page where the gnomes live, or tag me on Instagram, Oyella_crafts. Both those links are in the pinned comment below. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you super soon.